Hi, welcome to our session today on effective strategies to manage stress and coming corners. My name is Maria Pia Ulrich. I am the multicultural coordinator with Successful Innovations. All right, the first thing that I would like to go ahead and talk to you about first is our agenda. We're going to have an opening activity. We're going to have an introduction to what is stress. We're going to understand what stress is, and we're going to talk about strategies to manage it. And we're going to talk about coming corners and integration of these strategies into our regular life. Okay. So this is my life in emojis activity. I will recommend to go ahead and grab your phone and pick an emoji that represents your mood and how you're feeling right now. So if you go to the text messaging app and you pick your emoji, pick an emoji that represents how you're feeling right now. It can be any emoji. And just connect with yourself at that moment. And something that I like to do is go ahead and send it to myself. Right now, I have my emoji. And then I send it to myself. Right now, I feel kind of funny and silly, and I feel like very rushed. So that's how I'm connecting to myself right now. And if you're interested in the world of emojis, I recommend you to explore Emojipedia. Um, it is a website that shares what each emoji means. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and start with an introduction today. So, what is stress? So, according to the World Health Organization, stress can define the state of worry or mental tension caused by difficult situations. And stress is very variable for different people. Sometimes stress is extreme, where really bad things are happening to us, or huge accidents or unexpected things in life. And sometimes it can be a very minimal thing that most of us may not think that it causes us stress, but it's real and it's there. So it is a way that our mind tries to quote cope in its worry and it's in any difficult situation. Okay. Is this a normal part of life? Yes. Stress is natural for human beings. It's a response of how we cope and how we address changes in our lives and how we try going back to our very much caveman and animalistic moment. Stress really is just a response to threats that is there in our life because we have evolved from being caveman. In that sense, our stresses might not be that we are stressed because a tiger's coming to chase us now. We have different stresses where it's like, okay, I have to turn this project for work today. So the feeling of stress has never really gone away. It's there, but it is just different how it comes up to us. Do we all respond the same way? No, we do not. It really depends on the person and the situation, our way that we have encountered the world. And we use that to make sense of it. So every single one might stress one person out, may not stress the other person. For example, I have a friend that she is an excellent student. So the idea of not doing an assignment well stresses her out. I'm a working mom. I'm a mom. I'm juggling with so many balls around, and then I'm also going to school. So those stressors looking out, yes, I'm going to be honest, it would really make me sad if I don't do well on an assignment, but I don't have the same level of stress on it as I would. Now, because my role as a mom is more prominent to me, it stresses me out if I think that I am running late to pick up my kids or if I'm running late to take them to an activity, which to my friend would have been a different response. She would not have feel stressed about that because she doesn't have children. All right. So let's go ahead and take a moment to check in with our emotions and how are we feeling with ourselves. There's this beautiful wheel that is created from 6 seconds, and it is an organization created from the psychologists that made this wheel of emotions. As you can see, every emotion has a different word. So, how do you feel so far? Do you feel annoyed? Do you feel interested? Do you feel optimism? Do you feel appreciation, admiration? And there's different levels for those emotions. So I would recommend you, this is the link for the website from Dr. Plotnik, and it's about his wheel of emotions. If you click on it, you are able to go and see all of these emotions, the wheel, and you can also explore. This is very important, especially as a parent, with everything going on, with every single thing happening. I would, when we're talking to our children, they're trying to make sense of their emotions. So sometimes our kids might feel amazement, but they may not have the vocabulary word quite there yet, or they might feel distracted or surprised, or they might feel sad, or maybe they might feel a sense of joy or a sense of serenity. And those are different levels of those emotions. And sometimes they don't have the vocabulary quite there. So, as parents, as we're talking to them, just exploring this wheel of emotions, it gives us an idea of how intense do we feel? Is the intensity really high of that serenity? Then it may perhaps be joy. And if it's extreme, it might be this sense of giddiness and delight and ecstasy. But also verbalizing those things. And the reason we're doing this activity, and I'm showing you about this, is because sometimes with our own children, it's just so hard to know exactly what they're feeling, especially my oldest one. I have mentioned it before. He gets a little annoyed if he's reading a passage that is way too long. So then when I'm talking to him, it's like, are you feeling a little frustrated about this? Or maybe a little prickly? Do you feel maybe that this is taking too long? And noticing those triggers. And you can also see, okay, maybe are you starting to feel mad about doing this stuff? And just having those conversations with our children, because the more we verbalize the feeling and the emotion, we can identify whether it is stress, whether how we can solve the problem. And then this website has a really cool and amazing link about explaining about our feelings and how everybody else is feeling, and the amazing 7 facts about emotions. So those are just things to explore with our own kiddos, just so they can verbalize it. Because the whole idea of how do you know there's a problem if you haven't put a name or a word to it quite yet? So let's talk about understanding stress. So we have verbalized what our stress are, what is bothering us, what is annoying us, or maybe frustrating us. And now, what do we do with that information? So, why is it important to manage it? Well, not all stress is bad. And I found that very interesting from the Office of Disease Prevention and Health. All stress is not the same. And it can be a good thing because it can also be a driving force for change. But too much of that stressors can create a long-term feeling of stress that can lead to several issues and problems. As I was working on this presentation, I was looking at the Mayo Clinic, and stress really affects your body, your feelings, your thoughts, your behaviors, can lead to many changes in your body and your mood and behavior. That is why it's so important to talk to our kiddos about it and help them manage it. And it is a human nature to seek a way to measure or to regulate it. And when we are thinking about the effects of stress. For example, one of my sons, he loves to build Legos. That is his thing. And I noticed that as he was building a Lego, if he missed a step, if you have ever done Legos, if you miss a step of that Lego is done for. That means you have to take all the pieces apart and put them back together and try to figure it out how to fix it. And that was creating a lot of stress for my child. So as he was trying to do that, he was a lot of stress. There were some parts, but then at the same time, when he was able to manage it and regulate it, he was able to move on to the next step and to realize what he needed to do. So there were different levels to this to the stress he had when he was building the Legos. And I remember that when he was littler, the stress was like, oh, I just realized something is wrong and I need to change it and fix it, to the stress of like, oh no, I can't fix it at all. I have to pull every single piece apart. So it's important to talk to our children about, what do you notice when you're feeling stressed? Maybe you notice nothing. And if you do, then that's still noticing something. So the Mayo Clinic separated the stress can show in different aspects. It can show in your body, it can show in your mood, and it can show in your behavior. So if your body, it can start with a headache, or it can be muscle tension, or chest pain, or fatigue, or upset stomach. And you can get sicker, it lowers your immune system. Something that I would recommend to do is put one hand on your chest and put one hand on your stomach. And if you are feeling that your anger is here from the neck up, that means you're still very rational. If you're feeling your anger in your chest, like your chest is tightened, the level of stress has increased. And when you feel it in your stomach, is because you're very much overwhelmed. And I learned this in a talk from a counselor. He was explaining that when you feel it in your stomach, it's hard to start rationalizing. You want your stress to be somewhere up here. So when you notice those things in your body, how is it affecting it? And also your mood. Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling restless? Do you lack motivation? Are you feeling grumpy? Do we notice our children feeling sad or depressed? Do we notice our children feeling alone? Because stress can cause all of those things. And the reasons behind stress are different for every single person. And do we notice change of behavior in our children? Do we notice that they're overreacting or they're underreacting? Do they have random outbursts of anger? If they do, how come? And something that stress can cause is because it's human nature to want to self-regulate. It is very quite possible or easier to be more susceptible to drug and alcohol misuse and abuse. So especially to our children as they're going in middle school age, in high school, if there's a sense of stress or something is wrong, it is much easier to fall into peer pressure than to say, no, that's not for me. And how often are your children exercising? Exercise, I'm jumping off in the presentation, but if you notice the exercise has decreased, how is that affecting in their body because due to stress? Do they prefer to avoid going out with friends? Then there's a stressor happening. Okay. And of course, so what we need to do is recognize the triggers for ourselves and for our children, because they see a lot of the things that we do, and they're more likely to mimic it and do it. So take a moment and make a list of the things that just thinking about stresses you out, because that is your keynote of what your triggers are. And I would recommend to do this activity with your child at home and just try to talk about what those triggers are. What is that thing that starts putting that part of stress for you? If you are watching this webinar remotely, you can always pause the video and just take a time and write it down. Write down what those triggers are for you. For example, for me, one of my triggers are every Wednesday morning, I have to leave the house at 8 o'clock because I have to drop off my children and I have to drop them off at school. And then I have to rush to get to class. That is my stressor. That is my trigger. The idea of possibly being late. So if I have to leave the latest 8 o'clock, and just thinking about it, it's making me anxious and nervous, and I can feel it all over my body. And just that idea, it's is just triggering me in the sense of like, oh no, this is all the amount of stuff that I need to get done. And Wednesdays are just the hardest for me. So, and I can feel it somewhere in my chest, somewhere in my stomach, just the more I'm talking to you about this, because I just said 8 o'clock, but I'm wrong. It's not 8 o'clock. I actually have to leave the house at 7:45. And when I leave the house at 7:45, I have to rush and make sure that they have everything. And then as they have everything, I have to remind them that they have to take their band instruments, that they have to take their trombone, they have to take their folder, they have to take their lunchbox, they have to take their Chromebook. And if they forget any of those things, it literally triggers me in the sense that it makes me feel so frazzled, because then it's like, how am I gonna get all this stuff? Well, I need to get to my appointment at 9 o'clock. I need to get to where I need to be at 9 o'clock. So it's like all of these things are just running on my hair, and I know that is my trigger. So take that moment to realize what is that trigger for you. Okay. And ask yourself why. I just said, why is this so deep for me? Because I'm the only one taking care of everything on Wednesday morning. So it just stresses me out so much, the possibility that they could miss something and that I would be late and I won't be able to help. And just the idea that I can help my children or make it better for them is very triggering. And I know that about myself. So then that means on Wednesdays, I'm thinking of the how come that makes me feel that way. And what am I doing? Well, I have to remember that on Wednesdays, I have to wake up at 6:45, 6:30 to start getting things set up, to start telling them what to do, to start going from there. And that doesn't fix it, but it helps me slow down. And before I wake them up, sometimes I even try to wake up at 6:20 so I can have that minute for myself. So I can go ahead and relax and I can take just that moment to USA. Okay. And if I don't know what my triggers are, take a moment to notice your body. Once you see you are elevating or where your child is elevated, notice what happened before. What was the precursor of that? Okay. Is your heart racing? Is it in your stomach? And what is going on around you? Sometimes when it comes to our children, their stressors might also be their friends. So it's just trying to figure out what it is, what is the communication. So strategies to manage that stress. So there are several categories to consider. Be aware. Notice the signs of your body that are inhibiting that stress. Do you feel it in your toes? Are they crunching up? Do you feel it in your fingers? Do you feel it in your body? Where in your body? Because it's important to recognize those warnings to respond calmly. Like I said, on Wednesday mornings, I know that those are my stressful times, and I notice that I start getting all worked out when I'm holding my breath. So, what is that I need to do? I need to tell my brain, breathe. It's okay. Another thing to keep in mind that we can do is mindfulness. You put that hand on your belly, hand on your chest, and just take a minute to breathe or to meditate or to find those relaxation techniques. I know there's a lot of applications out there. I know there's a lot of webinars and shops and workshops that can do that and that can help you take care of that. And then just that helps you calm your mind, relax, and just think about what is going on. So then another thing to do is physical activity. What sports do you use? Do you walk around the block? There's a great book from Julia Cameron that she says, okay, walk every day. or write in a journal every day? What is that physical activity that you're doing that helps you calm yourself down? What is it that you do that just helps you reduce the tension and boost those endorphins? Do you like to go running? Do you like to go to the gym? Do you like to walk with your family? Do you like to go swimming? What is it that you do? Also, time management. Like I was talking about my example of the Wednesday mornings, I know I get very worked out. So the best way to take care of things is just to know that I have to get out early, that I have to do all of those things early. So that helps me feel better. And that helps me just take that moment to say, okay, I need a minute before I wake up, before I wake them up. I need to do this. I need to do the other. And then if I feel overwhelmed, I try to, that organization, time management helps me create that balance. Then also self-care and enjoyment. Take a minute to yourself. Those 20 minutes pre-waking them up makes a huge difference for me. That can help you restore your joy and your balance. Now, who's your support system? Who are your friends that you're talking to, your family, your peers? Who is that for you, for your children? And all of these categories, I'm trying to be very intentional about using in the you of the sense of the parent, because as you model this, you can also talk about it and show it to your children because you're living it by example. And what are the healthy choices that you're doing? What are you eating? Are you staying hydrated? Do you have a consistent sleeping time? And that's why it's important to set up that bedtime routine for yourself, for your kiddos. When your kiddos are going to bed, it's the best to go at 8 o'clock, or do they have a sport or activity that prevents them to go that early? So what do you do those days? And what do you do the day prior? And if you feel that some of the things are manageable, the best thing to do is to seek for a professional help from a doctor or a mental health professional to help you with stress, because these are just simple strategies. However, like we mentioned prior in the workshop, everybody has a different level of need, and we have to honor that. So here's another strategy that we wanted to really highlight because this is something that we can actively do and is within our control, is the calming corners and creating that safe space for our children at home. So who can use them? It can be for ourselves, it can be for our children. I remember very early on, sometimes it was easier to just say, I remember with my parents, sometimes when I would get in trouble, they'd be like, go to your room. Well, that's not necessarily a calming corner. That's just my space, and that was a punishment. So a calming corner has to be very intentional, where you have a conversation with your child and you tell them, this is the space where you can have a moment to yourself to try to think of your thoughts, to try to find a way to slow down, to think about what's going on, harness that problem, and try to work through it. So it is that place where you center yourself. The thing that I will say is find a place at your home that it is organized, that there's not extra clutter, that can be cozy and comfortable. If you notice that your child likes to sit down crisscross applesauce, then you might probably need pillows in that calming corner. Or maybe you notice that a blanket is more comfortable. And it has to be a conversation of what the purpose is. And sometimes I have seen parents where they put music, very calming music. Try a scent or a smell, a candle. And also try to find a strategy where you just are able to just slow down and be mindful and use that skill of mindfulness where you just take a moment. You think of your thoughts. You breathe in and breathe out, where you can focus on it. And you just slow down your movement and you just find what it is that is going on that is stressing you out, and how come that is a feeling there. And remember your why. Remember why you're doing the things that you're doing. Remember what was so upsetting and how we can react to it. A phrase that I feel we hear very often is the phrase of, we can't control what others do, but we can control what we do. And the idea of the coming corner is that we have that moment to just calm ourselves down and just take a breath, take a moment. Another thing that I would recommend is try to practice gratefulness and gratitude. In that coming corner is the perfect space to think of what you're grateful for and think about ways to express gratitude. Sometimes there's many things happening to us at once, and we learn so much from others, and we forget to thank them for those lessons. And just talking to our children about being grateful and what they're thankful for, and how have they let the other person know that they're grateful for that. And something that often as parents, I feel like we don't necessarily take into consideration is saying thank you to our children. Just taking the moment to say, I thank you because you were able to do X, Y, and Z, or you were able to help me. I remember I was getting all worked out because I thought we were going to be late to their practice. And I noticed that I was getting all worked out. So I'm trying to get all the bags in the car and I'm trying to get them set up. And then I realized that I forget something. And then my youngest son said to me, Mom, I already grabbed your green bag. I know you need it for school. And I know you do your work while while we're at practice. It's already in the car. And that was such a huge help for me. And even though I was getting all tense up and I was going up and down, running and trying to get all the things in the car, get them loaded up, and we were going to be late, this and then the other, the fact that my son did that, and then once I was able to sit down in the car and just take a minute and a deep, deep breath, and I was driving off, and I realized, oh, wow, this is the first time that he chose to help me in that sense, that he was aware how important my green bag was, how important it was to get it into the car. And he put it in, and that saved me from going in and out from the house. One less trip. And I said, thank you so much for getting my bag. Like, this is what he means to me. And he was just all smiles, like, oh, of course, Mom. But I realized that I didn't give him the proper credit for, and how much more that is strengthened our relationship. Just the ability of showing him that I was grateful and showing him that act of gratitude. So, how are you planning to integrate these strategies into your daily life? I would say, think about how your schedule looks like. What strategy that we talked about today in this webinar you enjoy? And what do you see working for your family and for your kids at home? If you think that the first strategy to start with is perhaps starting with something simple, like talking about our emotions, great. When do you think you can add that on to your day? Is that feasible? Is that doable? And is that attainable? Are you planning to talk about emotions on Monday? And I'm not saying stick to that specific schedule, but what I'm trying to bring is, how is that going to be attainable? And just start one step at a time, because sometimes I feel that I go to a webinar and I hear so many wonderful things and I want to try everything I can. And then there's just no possibility of the time to be able to do that, being a working mom, trying to run them around. But I can take a minute to be mindful. So that is something we can do in the car together as a family when we're going from place to place. And when do I plan to do this? Do I plan this to do on the way of practice? Am I planning to do it in the morning before they go to school or after school? And how would those conversations go with your family and with your kiddos? Because there has to be some sort of sense of buy-in, because the hope is that these strategies can help at home and that your children can see the benefit and purpose for them, as well as you incorporate in them. Is there any questions for our webinar today? All right, thank you so much for participating. Here are our references. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Thank you for joining us today on our webinar.